California Poetry in Bloom. And my name is Jen Siraganian. I'm the new Poet Laureate of Los Gatos, and I am absolutely thrilled to be hosting 4 award-winning poets today. Before we begin, I just want to thank Daniel Keogh and the Los Gatos Library for hosting the special event, setting up promotion, and really spreading the word about this new event today. And the reading is going to start with just a brief introduction of each poet, and then he or she will read. During the event, we just ask that you keep your microphones muted, and following the reading, there will be a brief Q&A in which questions may be asked via the chat feature in Zoom, or you may also just raise your hand and unmute yourself as well. And I hope you enjoy today's reading. So for our first poet is Camille Norton. She's the author of A Folio for the Dark, published in 2019, and Corruption Poems, which won the National Poetry Series in 2005. A member of 16 Rivers Press in San Francisco, she's also the professor of English at University of Pacific in Stockton, California. Her book is available via 16 Rivers Press, and I'll put the link in the chat, and Amazon. So please welcome Camille. Thank you so much.
Hi, I had been muted there, so yes. All right, so how nice to see all the other poets. And Dan, I know that you were once a member of 16 Rivers Press, and I have actually that book of yours in my library. So I'm reading from my most recent book, Folio for the Dark, and I'm reading from the last section of the book, and I think I probably will be just about right on time. So a lot of these poems they have to do with the East Coast. It was interesting that you were talking about that when I joined you, but they're very much Philadelphia Irish Catholic poems, and I will just contextualize them just a little bit because I think that's always helpful. So I'm going to start with a poem called Listening to Trains. And I grew up there was a train right behind me, I guess on the wrong side of the tracks. And there is a reference here to the death of John Kennedy, the assassination of John Kennedy when I was 8, and to the death of boys from getting into all kinds of accidents where I was growing up. So I'll do my best. How's the sound? Okay. Listening to trains. At night, I listen to the trains traveling between New York and Washington. The Crescent and the Senator burned along the corridor. And out there in the darkness, so close you could smell them, boys in bunkers near the tracks drank Boone's Farm apple wine and syrupy Manischewitz, or set their brains on fire with glue huffed from a paper bag. I was a girl and stayed inside. Boys could do anything. Sometimes boys jumped down from the railway trestle to challenge a train head on. This happened in 1965 to the Gore boys, a head-on collision with a train. When I was 8, Kennedy died. We thought the trains were his cortege, his wounded body wrapped in crepe, secreted inside one of them. They would carry him south to Arlington, past all the shanty Irish towns, Quincy and Mystic and Garrett Hill, little hobbled towns with no trees and a tap room on every street corner. The railroad cutting between the lace curtain Irish and the Tufts. Yes, that's how it was, how it must have been. A tap room on every street corner. The president dead and my father weeping into his highball. Whiskey and water and a little ice. Whiskey and water and the sound of the trains, all those years like the sigh of the wind soughing. When I left home at 18, my father cried, "They'll bring you back in a box." It was his way. He wanted to keep me home. He drank alone in his upstairs room, as his father had done. But I surmised how women survived. They ran for their lives. They did not marry. They did not marry, and they did not stay. They climbed out of a window. they boarded a train. Into what country, I will not say. Okay. The next poem is I wrote for a nun who had a tremendous impact on me when I was a very young girl. I went to Catholic girls' school for the first 2 years of high school. I'm very grateful for that, actually. On the strength of that, I was able to get into a graduate school. This is called Sister Marie John. She was one. There were 5 different orders of nuns at that school. It was a very big school outside of Philadelphia. And she was the head of the forensics team. And she was a tough woman. And I really admired her. So she's one of a series of incredible teachers that affected me in my life. So this is for her. Sister Marie John. Sister Marie John taught us to tower behind the podium, the better to destroy the opponent with logic. Straight thinking came from a straight body, a clean neck, a hemline tacked at the knee. Her best girls became prosecutors and professors of rhetoric. As for me, I was wayward. If I did not wish to be consigned to declamation or worse, oral interpretation, I would have to try harder. I tried. Ruddy-skinned, black-eyed and Irish, she surged inside her habit like a soccer player. When she was displeased, you could see the rash rising, a map of distemper on her cheek. Her name defined her. Marie was the woman, John was the man. Formidable dyad, she slept alone like a conqueror in her single bed at the convent. She'd given up her lover for God. I wanted to please her. She wanted us to beat men at their own game. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading in this light. Or boys, in our case, our callow brothers at LaSalle Prep and St. John the Divine, or St. Joe's, the Jesuit stronghold. Our debate topic that year, military intervention, unilateral versus multilateral, and the role of the UN. She taught us to argue both sides, depending on the draw, to nail out our points like blows, to look the judge straight in the eye, straight, no shilly-shallying about it, for no man was Christ, not even a priest in a skirt, not even the Archbishop of Philadelphia. One night, I remember, it was just Sister and me in the quiet vestibule of the school. The wainscoting shone from lemon oil. The marble staircase was empty. It was snowing. I was waiting for the trolley home to a house of incalculable rages where I got the strap. We stood together watching the snow, the way it furled and froze. I did not speak of home, which lay before me like a hurt. I stood empty and silent in the staircase. Long ago, I was a girl married to nobody. Sister, I wanted to say, sister. I must sharpen my mind. I must gather my wits. I must read my way out. I still want to say it to someone. Only now I think I've become her. Ruddy, great-bodied, dark and rich as a whirl of what's unspoken between women. Sister, I must sharpen, I must gather, I must read my way out. So just 2 more poems. This one is called Estuary, and it is it's a poem that comes out of an experience of near death when I almost drowned off the coast of Maine on Popham Beach, which had this incredible estuarial river running in and out of the ocean into the land. And I was swimming in this river with a really good friend, and the tide changed. And we were just swept away from where we were standing, and we didn't drown. We just kept our heads up above the water, and I saw my friend there with her eyeglasses on, Pally low. And anyway, so this little poem. estuary, an estuarial and ravening tide in Maine. The blackbirds on the banks are only spectators. You know the place. A river, not a river, we nearly drown there. The sea pours through the channel and turns. The sea takes us where we're standing and pulls. Far are the sailors' graves, the lobster traps rotting. Far the blackbirds and the buoys rocking. The seas and elsewhere. Pele, I still see your profile turning like a green Greek coin in the light. Hieratic and austere in your surrender. You could not swim, and I could, barely. And so we floated, our legs trailing through the abyss, our absurd eyeglasses skimming the water like periscopes turned to the sun. An osprey floated overhead, then it was gone. And I'm going to, thank you. I'm going to end with a poem that is in a number of parts, but I'm not going to read those really boring part numbers. I'm just going to keep going. And so some things, the poem is called Don't Leave Me. I wrote it while I was in New Hampshire for 2 months, and it rained almost the entire time I was there. And a really good friend of mine was dying of cancer. And this was also the part of the world where my long-term ex-girlfriend was living, and she has passed away since, but was a deep alcoholic. And so there's this question, I think, going all the way through of love and marriage, and some characters make an appearance here. Melville's whale, Moby Dick, makes an appearance, and Jonah makes an appearance, and there are all kinds of like forms of my dad, I guess. Okay, so, all right, don't leave me. I am sending you a piece of light. It's already quickening into something else. It comes through the window and keeps its shape. Oblong, like the windows, but in reverse. It burnishes the wall with its own scene on its own screen. The wind moves through it and the trees. Then something other moves, as if through water. Green waves of ferns, green plumes of lace. A minute more at least of lace. Don't leave me. Or I am staring down the hollow of a timber fall. Wild is speechless, but it does not forget. The fawn is gray, the doe is tan. Is nature indifferent in spite of us? Does it hold itself apart? Does it mind us? These are a child's questions. I dreamed about love in this place, winged, endeared to me, a brooding warmth, a beating heart, pressed against my heart, spiritus. That night, the storm tore through one long howl in the hollow of the trees. The deer lay close inside the ravages. A tough country, granite, the congregation, granite. The sky rains stones against the roof. We sit on the hard pews listening with our eyes closed, even so. How undressed the light is, plain as day, plain as nothing. Quaker meeting in Putney. I am almost 60. An old woman falls asleep slackly the way a child falls into your arms, as only a human falls into the flesh upholding. Did you imagine that love would change you? That you would begin to feel, as Merton says, like some other poet, some other monk? Is love a disturbance? Is it a clarion call, rouged with carnival? Or is it conversion at last, a turning toward that is also a turning away? I am inside the belly of Melville's whale. I am inside the belly of Melville's whale with Jonah. We are in the Atlantic, a couple of old salts. We talk sometimes between the ribs of the whale, which have a fine oiled shine to them like light. Why then did you never marry? Jonah asked tenderly. in a voice like my own voice, grued with smoke and brine. At first I say, for fear of the house, and the flap of the sheets in the yard, and the bed, and the winding sheet, and going nowhere like grandmother. How sad he seems, disconsolate on the other side of his rib, until I say, no, Jonah, it is for the love of the sea, and for love of the whale's body, and for love of you, that you find me here, unmarried by your knee. My ex-wife calls about a cat. Beckett, she says, the cat is called. She can't go on, she goes on. Into the drink with her, my wife, into the sink, and for how many years? Somewhere inside the phone, deep in a crevasse, my new girl cries, disconsolate. Why is it hard to be soft? Why does the oxymoron delight me? Why, in the place of granite, am I granite? What made me so, if not a blow early at the knees? We are not mysteries, or so I learned when I was too young to understand God's face, inscrutable like you, a thing of darkness, light, a foreigner, a contraband of sudden joy. Let love resolve us if we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camille. That was lovely. And once again, there are links to, if you'd like to purchase and support Camille's work, you can purchase her books either at 16 Rivers Press or Amazon. So our next poet is Dan Bellm. He has published 4 books of poems, most recently Deep Well, that came out from Lavender Ink in 2017. His recent poetry translations include Speaking in Song by Pura Lopez Colomé and The Song of the Dead by Pierre Reverdy. He lives in Berkeley and teaches literary translation and poetry at Antioch University of LA. And you can also find him at www.danbellm.com. I'll put his website in the chat as well. So please welcome Dan.
Thank you so much, Jen and Daniel, and thank you, Camille. Oh, that poem that ends, I must read my way out. That is, that's what I did as a child. So I'm gonna begin, this is a quarantine poem. My husband and I are about to celebrate 40 years together next month. And during quarantine, of course, we have learned to cut each other's hair, as many people have. If you want a buzz cut, I'm your man. It's the one thing I know how to do. So this is called Haircut. You sit shrouded on the kitchen chair with a bed sheet clipped at your neck, your head in my hands, boy in a barber shop. And what will we have today, young man? As the apparition of someone's dad, yours or mine, silently supervises from 60-odd years ago. And where do I, who should be an expert at this by now, begin? But with a kiss on the crown of your head, and here goes nothing, your quarantine buzz cut, the only style I maybe half know, as with a flick of the electric clipper, I start to soothe and carve away what dusty gray locks we've been growing together until they got unruly, and I go unevenly, I know, missing spots and passing over them again like second thoughts, like plaintive amends. Tender around your ears, filling in the moments with gossip and weather, though nothing is new, and making you at last more or less as smooth at the skull all over as when you entered the world. Because who else will do it, alone as we are? This hair that will keep growing in the grave a while, how long, unshorn at the last, where I kiss your head again to say I'm done. So for a couple of years, I've been, from before COVID and during COVID, I've been volunteering as an interpreter with migrants from Central America, helping people apply for asylum. And during one of our government shutdowns a while back, I thought of the classic Chinese poem by Du Fu called Spring Vista. This is like 8th century China. And he's in a a rural official trying to hold it together in wartime. And his poem famously begins, "The kingdom is ruined, but the mountains and rivers remain." And I thought of that poem and I wrote this: "After Du Fu, spring vista." And there's some migrants in here, which is why I said that. February, spring. The government is shut down, but the mountains and rivers remain. Warming too soon after the 3 months fire, like songbirds nesting in the next door full green tree, about to depart. Here I am, a low official in an outer district, hair going white as new blossoms, taking count of the migrants coming in between sections of the uncompleted wall, like letters from home, pleading asylum from our war. And I interpret to the guardians of law what they have to say. And on the subject of migration, you might remember the previous guy, who shall not be named, declaring one day, "Our country is full, period." So this is a political rant of sorts, a time-honored poetical form. And I take it from there. And I use some of his words because you can't make this stuff up. Our country is full, and having filled it for our own fulfillment, having nabbed it like Sooners in our land grab, sooner than we thought, and much sooner than you. And so what if the land was preoccupied? We got so fully occupied with it that it got full, till we'd rushed all the way to that uttermost Rushmore of a rock from where you see Russia, by God's own alternative truth. And having told as much truth from the start as we could stand, and still ruthlessly sleep, but telling it slant, ever since the first ship sailed slantwise through the middle of the passage of the impossible sea, our first guest workers in chains below decks, to the beaten shore of an old Virginia we made old before it was new, to do the undocumented laboring at what we graciously called our plantation. For it was only a matter of planting, and all the rest would grow of its own. Sadly for you, good gracious, it has, dear immigrant in detention at our door, where we'll need to keep you from your children, a practice we've practiced at since our free labor program began. And now there are too many of you of the darker shades, because it's a wondrous thing how the plantation grew with God's grace shed all over it, and as many guns in our hands as we've got people, and the snakes and the alligators in the moat just in case. Seeing how so blessed many of you had already swum in while we slept where that alien lady had lifted her lamp in our midst in the mist. So we're sorry to say the plantation is full. There is no more room. We've looked everywhere. You must believe us. There's no room for you, whether it's asylum from our war or it's anything you want. We ran out. We can't take it. We can't have it. We can't have you. Turn around. We can't take you anymore. Yeah, that ending is completely from that guy. Okay, and keeping with migration and immigration, in the past year I finished translating a wonderful poet from Chiapas, Mexico named Balaam Rodrigo, and his book, Central American Book of the Dead, which is all about it's mostly a series of monologues, voices of the living and dead, Central Americans traveling north through Mexico. And this one is called Oración del Migrante, the migrant's prayer. And one of the challenges of translating this is that practically every verb in it is a variant of the verb levantar, which in innocent usage just means to raise or lift or get out of bed or to rise up, but it's become police and media jargon and sort of news speak for lifting people, abducting people, which often leads to disappearance and torture. So you don't want to be levantado. And so English doesn't have one word that does all those things, so I had to be resourceful. There's a reference to the beast, La Bestia, and that is the network of freight trains that hundreds of thousands of migrants travel on every year because they have no other choice. An incredibly dangerous way to travel, often fatal. And it's one place where many people get lifted. Migrant's prayer. I don't want to get up, Father. I don't want you to wake me up, Mother. I'd rather fall into the loving, knife-sharp arms of the beast. No one wants to be grabbed up, Father. No one wants to be rounded up, Mother. I used to get myself up for school, Father. I used to get myself up to go play, Mother. The caress of your hands would raise me up from sleep, Mother. Your words would lift me up from the table, Father. I would lift my face up to the sun. Once we were up, we'd go to the cornfield, the woods, the pasture for that season of the year. But here in Tenosique, Father, others have lifted me, Mother, with humiliation and torture, with rape and with slaughter. They came for me earlier and later than you ever did, Mother, and for forever, Father. I don't want them to pick me up. I don't want to stand up ever again. Let no one rouse me forevermore. The sheets that cover my face are not white, but stained with blood. Now take up my body on a litter to Honduras. Take up my body and my tears in a coffin. Take up my black bones to be buried in Tegus. I don't want them to return and snatch me up, Father. I don't want them to come back and carry me off, Mother. I don't want to be spirited away. Tell them I'm not here. Never wake me, Father. Never wake me up, Mother. That's Bellm Rodrigo. I'd like to read 3 short poems from my most recent book, Deep Well, that Jen mentioned. It's there are really 3 sections of one long poem that I wrote in memory and in honor of my mother. We just passed the anniversary of her death. It's been 10 years now. So I'll read 3 short pieces. And then one brand new one, and then I'm done. This one's called She Waits. Looked for her in the unseen, in the play of air against the edge of what appeared to be. A child's laugh in a neighbor yard could recall her, only to call her back into what had passed. Sought her in dreams, but she waited at one side in the not to be dreamed of yet, neither asking for hope nor giving it, not saying yes or no. Tried to step out of the way as she taught to see if that would make it simpler to be found. Felt she wanted to be held, even hold on to the child she'd made, but she wouldn't say. Was it more blessed not to be anyone? Was that the problem now? Was she deciding? Tried praying her across then, but could not, for she kept remaining in the light she had brought to the world. This piece is called Heaven. After a long time of asking, or because I had stopped asking, my mother was there. A mother from a healthier time, though already in the dementia. She lay her hand across my chest to comfort me that my mother was dead. She asked if my mother was in heaven. We shrugged with a smile of not knowing. I think so. I said, I think that's what happens. I took out a notebook to write it down, to keep it. I don't believe in heaven. It made her curious. She was at my shoulder looking down at the paper. Will you watch me so I tell the truth? But there was only the palest of smiles now, into which she disappeared. And one more, this is called Sabbath. Then will I carry you within me for as long as I can, not a consolation, but a promise, and not because I must, not as you carried me, but to be your keeper, a place where you remain the one bearing life. Not as a god or idol that I have made too small, but only blessing you do I keep the blessing safe. Infant image of the created one I long to be, Sabbath self concealed in the guise of ordinary time, my life the covering that protects the vow. And one last new, maybe sort of post or almost post-COVID poem, slowly. I'm just calling it Reemergence. It's brand new. And then we came out of our houses, if we had houses to shelter in, for some had stayed with none. Under the freeway or camped in the shadows of walls, barely out of the rain, or gathered at the border asking for home, held in wait for a yes or a no. Was the plague gone now? The plague was not gone. The emergency there were now shots against, if we had shots, for some had stayed with none. We emerged with masks still in place to restrain our breath. We reached out hands without touching yet. It was a new emergency. The old one had mutated to another. The world we had sheltered from was gone. We had to emerge into another if we had a world, if the world was for all of us, if the world was to be ours. Thank you.
Oh, so wonderful. Thank you so much, Dan. Again, please check out his website, is in the chat. Buy his books, support our writers. He has four different books to look at, so check those out. So our third poet today is Leigh Herrick. He's the author of 3 books, including Scar and Flower, which was a finalist for the 2020 Northern California Book Award. He also co-edited The World I Leave You, Asian American Poets on Faith and Spirit. He teaches at Fresno City College and the MFA program at Sierra Nevada University. And I'll also be providing a link in case you're interested in purchasing his latest collection, Scar and Flower. Please put your hands together for Leigh Herrick.
Hi, thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. And also thank you to Daniel. And it is really, really wonderful to be reading with Camille and Dan. Dan, that was fantastic. My goodness. And Thea, it's really nice to be here with all of you. And I want to just say before I start reading that, needless to say, it's been a long, difficult year and a half, but I hope you're all doing well and taking care and starting to see some light ahead. So I hope you're all well. I'm gonna read all from Scar and Flower. I was born in South Korea and adopted at 10 months. And so this first poem I'm gonna read is for my first mother or birth mother, Korean mother, whom I've never met. And I think as I was writing it, I realized it was also a bit of a poem for other transnational adoptees. How music stays in the body. Your body is a song called Birth or First Mother, a miracle that gave birth to another exquisite song. One song raises 3 boys with a white husband. One song fought an American war overseas. One song leapt from 14 stories high and like a dead bird shattered into the clouds. Most forgot the lyrics to their own bodies or decided to paint abstracts of mountains or moons in the shape of your face. I've been told mothers don't forget the body. I can't remember your face, the shape or story, or how you held me the day I was born, so I wrote 1,000 poems to survive. I want to sing with you in an open field, a simple room, or a quiet bar. I want to hear your opinions about angels. Truth is, angels drink too. Soju spilled on the halo, white wings sticky with gin, as if any mother could forget the music that left her. You should hear how loudly I sing now. I've become a ballad of wild dreams and coping mechanisms. I can breathe now through any fire. I imagine I got this from him or you, my earthly inheritance, your arms, your sigh, your heavy song. I know all the lyrics. I know all the blood. I know why angels howl into the moonlight. So this next poem, specifically, I've started thinking about Tamir Rice a lot, who was 12 years old in Chicago when the police killed him within 12 seconds of rolling up in a park. And others, 2014 when Rice was killed was also Michael Brown and Eric Garner and others. What I hear when I hear you in my head. It's the little whisper, the aggregate sorrow, the father's heavy weeping as the son's heavy weeping. What I hear is your artistic response after the massacre, the family of clasped hands, black hands, brown hands, a small child whose brother never had a chance, who holds her father's tearful face and says, "Your eyes are like the moon," is what I hear when I hear you in my head this evening, your laughter like tiny harps. I hear your fatigue as another way to say deprivation. I hear recount, retally. A retaliation is what I hear when I hear you in my head this evening. It's the grace, the charm, the dead, the boy, the dead boy, the boy who died because of the fear, the forest in the other man's heart, the gun, the heartbreak is the sound I hear when I hear you in my head this evening is how we each sigh with distinction, where fatigue meets fire, where we wake and wonder, if we all go out to a field tonight, sit by a fire, say the most honest thing you've ever said in your life, would any dead boy or girl reappear? Not like a mirage, but reappear. Not like a voice in my head, but a body in this room, with flesh and bones, with his big smile and orange blossoms in his billowing hair. This is a little shorter poem. It's titled Exile. Our natural state is not defensive or tense, but water in a resting state. We state this to be true in an age of inquiry, our failure to put what is just before ease. There are lovers in another country reclining by a fire, admitting love in a common language with faith in the exiles of their state, where a woman looks at her friend and says, "Please, put down your bag and stay. Please, stay to see how the movie ends. Take my hand. I think the city might go up in flames." Okay. Sorry, I'm checking checking the time. I flew very recently. I was safe and wore masks, and like it was last weekend. It was bizarre and sort of surreal, and obviously a privilege. Sounds ridiculous to say I was flying. But this poem I'm going to read is called Flight, and it was about a flight to Southern Oregon. And I was doing a crossword puzzle, and this woman sitting next to me, I kid you not, She started to tell me the answers to my own crossword puzzle. And I didn't know whether to say, that's very nice, or to say, what are you doing? This is my crossword puzzle. But anyway, it turned into a poem about just people and the people we meet and wonder about. Flight. The in-flight magazine crossword partially done. A corner begun here, scratched out answers there. One set of answers in pencil, another in the green. The woman with the green ballpoint knew the all-time hit king is Rose, and the Siem Reap treasure is Angkor Wat. And the woman, perhaps en route to hold her dying mother's hand in Seattle, forgot about death for 10 minutes while remembering her husband's Cincinnati Reds hat while gardening after the diagnosis. Her handwriting was so clean. Maybe she was a surgeon, maybe a painter. No, what painter wouldn't know 17 down? Diego's love, 5 letters. In a rush, her dying mother's voice came back to her, or maybe she was a Chinese adoptee and her first mother's imagined voice said, "Woe I me." At 30,000 feet, you focus on 33 across, Asian American classic, the woman. When a stranger in the window seat sees the clue and watches me write in W, and she says, "Warrior." And for a moment, you forget it is your favorite memoir, and she reminds you of lilies or roses, Van Gogh or stems with thorns, art galleries in romantic cities where she is headed, but you should not go. The flight attendant grazes my shoulder. The crossword squares, the letters, the chairs and aisles seem so tight in flight, but there's nothing here but room, really. Maybe the next passenger will know what I do not. 64 down, 5 letters, purpose. And why do we remember what we do? We know the buzz of Dickinson's fly and the number of years in Marquez's solitude, but some things we will never know, as it should be. Why the body sometimes rumbles like a plane hurtling over Southern Oregon. How exactly we fall in love, or if Frida and Maxine Hong Kingston would have loved the same kind of tea. Okay, and I'll just read. I'm just going to read one more. This is the last poem in the book, sort of for my daughter. I was thinking about my daughter when she was younger and reading. It's called "The House is Quiet Except." My daughter reads on the couch, whispers the dialogue. I only hear the consonants of her name, the way I imagine a house of books in a future age, 2035, when I will be 65 and alive, I hope, and she will be 31, perhaps with faith and a love she can count on. Wild trees, wild flowers, a man or a woman, perhaps God or someone else to whom she can whisper dialogue if she forgets where her heart is. How there is a pulse in every book. How looking down into the open page reminds us of prayer, the next night of restoration, the light around her body. Thank you.
Oh, so gorgeous. Thank you so much, Leigh. Please check out the links I provided in the chat a little bit earlier if you want to check out his latest collection from Bookshop. Order away. And so our fourth and final writer today is Thea Matthews. She's a poet, author, and educator. Her debut collection, Unearth the Flowers, was listed as part of Best Indie Poetry of 2020 by the Kirkus Review. Her work has appeared in the New Republic, Atlanta Review, the Rumpus, and others. Please welcome Thea Matthews.
Oh, Brianna, say, George, Can, Trayvon, you, Michael, C, Eric, Bye, EJ, the Dons, Sandra, Early Light, what so proudly, John, we hailed, Chad, at the twilights, Alton, last gleaming, Michael, C, Eric, Bye, EJ, the Dons, Maya, whose broad stripes, Tamir, and bright stars, Urukai, the perilous fight, Tanisha, o'er the ramparts, we, Sandra, Early Light, what so proudly, John, we hailed, watch so, Chop, gallantly streaming, Sean, and the rocket's red glare, Miriam, the bomb bursting, Kiki, in Chad, at the twilights, Alton, last gleaming, air, gave proof, Larry, through the night, Clinton, that R, Timothy, Flag, Darnisha, was still there. You know, today, I mean, most days, today, May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered, which really kicked off the latest uprisings of 2020, the summer. And it's not new, you know, and there eventually was a trial. But today is definitely a day to remember in terms of just the weight, the gravity of genocide, of colonialism, of what this country feasts on. And I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you, Jen. It's been an honor to listen to the poets, to Daniel, to Camille, to Leigh. Yeah, I'm honored. And so debating on what to read, I was like, well, one of the latest series that I'm working on is titled Americana, that utilizes form and finds the American flag as this focal metaphor and entry point into illuminating, or I should say unthreading, what this country stands on and interrogating the notions of justice. And so here, as you can see, inserting, right, interweaving old traditional, you know, what have you, patriotic songs from Star Spangled Banner, Oh Amazing Grace, you know, you see it, but also inserting, I mean, gosh, a dot to all the names that have been snatched, you know. And so I won't go long. I want to just read a few for you and share with you some of what I've been working on. And yeah, close with a poem from Unearth the Flowers debut collection. Here we go. So, Americana. If you stare long enough, stars will move, the eagle says. Watch me invade, force myself in, shove this hard beak into obituaries, red streaks, smeared fingerprints, cold case files, testaments on trial. The eagle says, watch me invade, force myself into a congressional bill, a mountaintop, a Capitol Hill for a veil, infliction of pain, hangs for exhibit, soars to fire, shove this hard beak into obituaries. Red streaks, televised, dodgeball, a hurrah, unity, a $5 thimble, blue ribbons prick white, a man's words, fingerprints, cold case files, testaments on trial. The more stars twinkle, bullets ask, do you see me as I really am, or just another star ready to shoot? Each poem bears the same title, by the way. So it's like anti-long poem, if you will. To profile, to plate, skin with thread, chopped oak, a burning crucifix, throbs, white charter, United Statesian, the terror emblems, blackened children, America's most wanted, a pine wood coffin draped across this heart, a burning crucifix, throbs, white charter, United Statesian, 7 stripes, prisons to plantations, complex industrial, a threat, tied to rope, a swollen liver, diabetic dialysis, the terror emblems, blackened children, America's most asthmatic, the dream-induced asphyxiation, habitual deprivation, promise slaughtered, like kneecaps hung, sold, wanted, a pinewood coffin draped across this heart, congeniality, fists a heart, this nation shrouds, throated yowls, pins me to the back of a pickup truck. And then here's one I was playing with that really experiments with I, right? Like the collective we, the collective I, and how the I can shift, right? We're all humans. You know, it's easy to other people, other those who have been harmed, who've been victims, other those who have been perpetrators, murderers. That's not the way to liberation, you know? I hands open executes a cow, palms its limbs, its dead skin unleashes, spikes, uniforms, gnashed teeth, a baton, a bait, a bot, woman, a whip. What man lashes another man's back? I watches. When fingers get clipped, a tongue, wait for it, stitched, be a bullet, point in geometry. A sheet of dead trees. I cannot withstand the keening of another night. I walks across the street, avoids eye contact, in fear of catching perfunctory augury of DNA, congealing on pavement. All I know is this country palms its living under heat, a cooked homemade lie, past stiff cotton sheets, past podium debris, past my questioning with a razor, the width between artery and skin. I have thought about it, and that's when I wins the dollar contest of collateral possession, black boot lodged in my throat from the middle. I cannot club a grin, a badge number, the eulogies in an iris, the pupil in eyes. This pupil kneels, kneecaps bust in windows, their dogs dogging, jogging, bodies, bird watching. I am prey in the park, on sidewalks. I am watched even when I enter Walgreens, while eyes, a parade of pickup trucks, a van of zip ties round up the protests into an aisle. I walks the good old ye faithful up the aisle. I carry the cross for 14 stations. Up the road I see a Simon catch a lift. At 5, I picks me up amidst all eyes. I stands hissing, heckling in the morning. A Becky refers to I maladjusted, destabilizing what I truly feel, what I do. I refuses to accept the gravity admitting desire to have all the black out What stands divided, what suffocates blue, claims the weight of a taser for a gun, a criminal. I watches, content with resignation. I hands close. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that incredible reading and the showing of your poems. So before we are going to do a brief Q&A, but before we do that, I also want to recognize today is May 25th, and that George Floyd did die a year ago today in Minneapolis. And so before the Q&A, I think more importantly, if we could just take a moment of silence just for that. Thank you. Really important day for us all to remember. And so just for the, I want to give some time that if there are any specific questions that any of you have for any of the 4 poets today, I would love to create some space for that as well. Again, feel free to either, you can raise your hand or write something in the chat. And if you'd like to do it anonymous, you could also chat with me directly and I can just read your comment and share it as well. But does anyone have anything that they would like to maybe ask about any of the poems or the poets today?
I really just want to acknowledge the incredible strength of this group of poets and what an amazing reading this has been. Thank you, Thea. It's really so good to see the language on the page. It's really a remarkable reading, everybody. Thank you so much. So, okay, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Camille. Yeah, I could not agree more. I've done many readings and programming in my past and used to work at Litquake for many years. And this is a very, this reading is definitely very potent. I see there's just a question of, is everyone here, I think in the audience, maybe asking as well, a writer? So maybe if anyone wants to raise their hand and share if they are a poet or a writer, you can raise your hand. Let's see. It's a good number. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. And any other questions? Wonderful. Well, again, I really first want to thank our incredible readers. So Dan and Leigh and Camille and Thea, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful words, powerful words. I know there are lines that are still swimming in my head and colliding with just such power and energy, and I will be haunted in wonderful, powerful, and tragic ways. And so I appreciate all of you sharing your work. And I also want to just really call out for Daniel Keogh, even though you can't see him right now, he's blacked out, but he's our wonderful librarian. There he is at Los Gatos Library. And he is just a superstar in terms of promoting everyone and creating the Zoom event and recording and everything. And then I want to thank all of the audience as well for being here and supporting poets. And if you do have the ability, please do support our poets. Check them out online, go to their websites, buy their books. I can't think of a better way to spend money to support our lovely artists and poets. And thank you again so much for being here. There will be more readings coming up this summer and this fall. But thank you again and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Jen, for curating this. And thank you, Daniel,
Yes.
for holding
Of
down the
course.
fort. Thank you, everyone.
Yay. Thank
Safe.
you.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.